effects. It described each of us as the result of causes and effects. This is the dharma. It is not a usual view of the world. It is not the usual way we view ourselves, but it's a glimpse into reality as it is. Dr. Matsunaga, my dear teacher, used to say that that's what the Buddha was trying to show us, the world as it really is. I'd like to talk about 3 important causes and some of their effects this morning. Sometimes in the holiday season, Buddhists feel a little bit left out, but that's not necessary. This is a very important time for us. The causes I'd like to talk about are Ho On Ko, which we translate as Thanksgiving, and that's usually celebrated on November 28th, and that's when we're thankful for Shinran Shonin, the gentleman depicted in the picture behind me, the founder of the Shinshu aspect of Buddhism. The gift that Shinran gave us and from his teacher Honen is a special awareness of Amida Buddha and his presence and the 48 vows he made to provide us with pure land. Another interesting cause that we have today is Jodo-e, or Enlightenment Day. And we usually celebrate that on December 8th. That celebrates the enlightenment of Gautama Buddha 2,500 years ago. He brought to us insight into how reality is constructed and how we often delude ourselves out of convenience to see what we want to see. And the third cause I want to talk about today is the 48 vows of Amida Buddha. The enlightenment of Amida Buddha was conditional. He was a bodhisattva and long ago vowed to create a pure land where it would be easy for all of us to attain enlightenment. These big causes have directly contributed to us being here today. Without any one of them, we would not be here today together. From the recent past of Shinran Shonin, only 750 years ago, which seems recent in Buddhist terms, to the distant past of Amida Buddha, these causes are still active now. The recent and the distant labels, those aren't even real. I mean, what's recent? What's distant? They're both happening right now to us. Timeless time is a word Shinran Shonin used to describe this feeling or this experience of humans. I subtitled my talk, The Physics of Relationship. And that's because we see everything as in changeful flux, as empty of its own inherent existence. That means that our dukkha, our suffering that we experience each day, is actually made out of the same stuff as sukha, or our ultimate state of being truly human, of not suffering. Through the grace and compassion of Amida Buddha, this is available to us right now. So let me start and speak a little bit about Ho On Ko, Thanksgiving that we celebrate on November 28th. Now, this is a little bit late. I probably should have mentioned it to you before Thanksgiving, but there's always next year. Millions of Jodo Shinshu families celebrate this day of Thanksgiving in gratitude. Ho On Ko means gratefulness gathering. This is a festival to remember Shinran Shonin, who founded our teachings and spread them in the world. Shinran Shonin gave us these teachings as an agent of great compassion. He studied the Pure Land masters we chanted about in the Shoshinge and determined that an end of suffering was possible through the Nembutsu, taking refuge in the Amida Buddha. He focused on unburdening us of the arduous path of self-effort as taught in other schools of Buddhism, and instead showed us that the other power of Amida Buddha was our primary path to enlightenment. When Shinran Shonin lay dying, he said, "Where there is one saying the Nembutsu, think there are two. Where there are two saying the Nembutsu, think there are three. For I shall be the extra one." Now Shinran himself, who in the 13th century could not have traveled beyond Japan, and only traveled as far as his exile took him, his Shin Buddhism can be found all around the world today. In homes in Japan, in Europe, in Africa, South America, North America, United States and Canada for our Canadian friends. And my sister is Canadian, always cringes when I say American. For North America. People are celebrating this occasion by reciting with gratitude the Shoshingi that Shinran Shonin left us and his transmission of the Dharma. These teachings, which once only had a few followers, today have millions. But we should remember the words of Reno Shonin, who said, "Speaking of the great prosperity of this Buddhist school, it is not a matter of the number of people in the assembly and the depth of its sincerity. If anyone, even just one single person, gets faith, this is the great prosperity of our sect." This is one of the causes that brought us all together here today. Another cause, Jodo-e, December 8th. A little bit before the 25th of December, which is another holiday this month. Shakyamuni's Great Awakening. About 2,500 years ago, I started trying to do the math to get 2,400, and I lost track. So 2,500 years ago, we celebrate this day with awareness. Dr. Matsunaga encouraged us to create an enlightenment tree in our home with a Buddha sitting beneath it to remind us of this heroic moment that brought great insight into our lives. Shelley was kind enough to construct our enlightenment tree here and place Siddhartha Buddha beneath it. When Dr. Matsunaga would drive around Reno in December, and in the evening when he'd see everyone turn the lights on in the front of their house, or the lights decorating their house, he'd kind of chuckle to us and say, "Isn't it wonderful? All these people are celebrating enlightenment." Gautama Buddha made a great vow on that day, 2,500 years ago, to achieve nirvana, to find nirvana, to understand how the world really worked, to find out the root of suffering, and while meditating, or die trying. While meditating, he was harassed and tempted by the god Mara, the destroyer, the demon of illusion. After his enlightenment, the Buddha described 3 stages. During the first watch of the night, the Buddha discovered all his past lives and the cycles of rebirth, and realizing that he had been born and reborn countless times. During the second watch, the Buddha discovered the law of karma and the importance of living by the Eightfold Path. During the third watch, the Buddha discovered the 4 Noble Truths and finally reached nirvana. In his words, "My heart, thus knowing, thus seeing, was released from the fermentation of sensuality, released from the fermentation of becoming, released from the fermentation of ignorance. With release, there was knowledge. Released. I discerned the birth, that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further to this world. Then the morning star rose in the sky that early morning of the third watch, and Siddhartha finally found the answers he sought and became enlightened and experienced nirvana. He saw reality as it really is. Having done so, Siddhartha became a Buddha, an awakened one. How do we celebrate this wonderful event? We place reminders around the house and make it a special time. The tree, I heard a story of one family baking Bodhi tree leaf cookies as kind of a way to enjoy and share with children to understand the season. Often a heart-shaped cookie cutter is available for Valentine's Day, a little stem on the back. Most of all, take the time to reflect and be grateful. So, December 8th, very few other people will remind you, but that's a day to take a pause and think. Gautama Buddha, the teacher, described that a person is really made up of 5 heaps. Heaps is a funny word, because I think of myself as a solid object, but I'm not really. 5 skandhas is the Pali word, which sounds better than heaps. The first heap is matter, or form, the physical form, just made up of organs and senses and sensing parts, nose, tongue, body. The second part is feeling. The feeling is how we receive through physical things into the senses, into the mind. The third heap is recognition, or conception. The functioning of the mind in distinguishing and formulating concepts. So I have my body, I have a sensation, then I start thinking about it and say, oh, this is this sensation. So that's 3 steps in. The fourth skandha is volition, or mental formations. When we start to decide to do something, or we decide to think of a thing as a particular thing. Habitual action, conditioned responses. If I see a red light, I stop. I don't think about it. I don't consider it. I'm not aware of it. I do it out of habit. Whether it is good or not good is immaterial in the fourth stage. And the fifth skandha, or heap, is consciousness. The mental faculty in regard to perception, cognition, and experience. Maybe a higher process. My son asked when I was discussing what I was working on for my Dharma talk, that wouldn't it be uncomfortable for some people to hear or consider themselves as heaps of particles, not being substantial? But I think it's okay if it feels a little bit uncomfortable. It's probably good if it feels uncomfortable. It's probably not good if it doesn't feel odd to think of yourself that way. By realizing this is what makes us up, we're liberated from false understanding of our own permanence. And that uncomfortableness comes from the difference between what we usually think, our kind of conventional self, hopping through life without really consideration, and then a deeper thinking of what am I really made of? This takes us out, by understanding this takes us out of a chain of cause and effect that creates our suffering. Sometimes realizing reality as it is can be a bit scary, but it is essential to our accepting Nembutsu and the other power of Amida Buddha as our path to end suffering. Gautama Buddha further described that all things are really made up of interdependent co-arisings. All things are not really things at all. They are events. The Buddha explained interdependent co-arising, Atichi Samuppada in Pali. I actually took a liberty there and added interdependent co-arising because I wanted to seem even more interdependent. He explained, as I said in the beginning, when this is, that is. Another translation says, when I am, that is. This arising, that arises. When I am not, this is not. This, when I cease, that ceases. All things change and pass away. If you take this away, this one thing, this one idea that all things change and pass away, if you take that one thing away from today's talk, it will be of great benefit. If we hold and cling on to things that change, we suffer. We can also see through this that everything is connected. One day, Reno Shonin, an abbot of the Hongranji, picked up a piece of paper he found in the hallway. And he said, "These things are all the property of the Buddha. We should think twice before letting them go to waste." What Reno Shonin wants us, what it was trying to tell us, is that scrap of paper belongs to the world of the Buddha, so we should not be wasteful. This does not apply to paper alone. Reno was saying that all things must be treated with great care and not merely hungrily consumed to no purpose. He was teaching us, Atichi Samuppada, that all things are interdependent and interconnected and joined. While this is true of human life, it is also true of life outside the human sphere, as well as things in nature form a whole being connected in this way. This is the truth of Atichi Samuppada. Shinran Shonin left us these words. As for me, Shinran, I have never said the Nembutsu, even once, for the repose of my departed mother and father. For all sentient beings, without exception, have been our parents and brothers and sisters in the course of countless lives in many states of existence. On attaining Buddhahood after this present life, we can save every one of them. From the Tani Show. In other words, in the tradition in the time before Shinran was to specifically say the Nembutsu to help departed parents. But in other words, what Shinran we'd say now is, I have never once said the Nembutsu for the sake of my father and mother. The reason I do not do it is this. In the course of rebirth, all forms of life undergo. We have all been bonded to one another as father, mother, sister, and brother. We cherish all life as our mothers and fathers. We show and we know that once one becomes a Buddha, we will be in a position to aid everyone. So this event, the enlightenment of Gautama Buddha, is an important cause, another important cause, I should say, for us being here together today. The last cause I want to talk about are the vows, the 48 vows of Amida Buddha. About 10 kalpas ago, Amida Buddha created his Pure Land. Now, a kalpa is a description of time. Maybe a better word for it would be world cycle. And you can think of that however you like to think of that. It really means a long, long time. And then 5 kalpas before that, he vowed to create this land. According to the larger sutra, The Immeasurable Life, Amitabha was, in very ancient times, a monk named Dharmakara. And before that, he was a king who had come in contact with the Buddhist teachings through the Buddha Lokasvara Raja. When he encountered the teaching, he renounced his throne and resolve to become a Buddha. So to come into possession of a Buddha energy field we might call the Pure Land, that possessed many perfections. These vows were set out to create the condition where all sentient beings, whether enabled with great strength and perseverance, or only endowed with a simple method of thought, could access, using the other power of Amida Buddha, enlightenment. At this point, maybe I should mention that when I say Buddhism, I don't mean a religion that venerates Gautama Buddha or a person. Buddha is an enlightened being. So Buddhism is a veneration of enlightenment. That's what we're all about. So whether it's in the recent history of this world 2,500 years ago, or in the ancient path of the universe, Buddhism has been here. Amida Buddha actualized these vows by giving us a way to access the Pure Land through the Nembutsu, by saying his name and taking refuge, by cultivating true and trusting in the vow, by truly entrusting that Amida Buddha is here for us, that the other power we feel in everyday life is really there. When this great vow of Amida touches our hearts, one does not think, well, as long as I'm happy, that's all that matters. You don't have to worry about the rest. When Amida's other power touches our hearts, we have to think of our interconnectedness with everyone and realize that great compassion will save all of us. Don't think in the narrow sense, not even just of those close to you, with yourself at the center. Think more expansively of this great life force linking us all together. In this world, there is no life that is ever lived in vain. There is no life that is meaningless. All life is linked together, and all of us share the light of Amida Buddha that shines upon us. So everything is an event in a chain of causes and results. This is the Dharma. It is not a usual view of the world or of ourselves, but a glimpse of reality as it is. We are here today because of Hong Ko. Shinran gave us a special awareness of Amida Buddha's presence and the proximity of the Pure Land. We are here because of Jodo-e, the enlightenment of Gautama Buddha, brought us an insight into how reality is constructed and how we are all connected. And we are here today because of the 48 vows. They create a pathway for us to access liberation from endless cycles of rebirth and suffering. When we see everything as a changeful flux, as empty of its own inherent existence, that means our suffering that we feel each day is actually made out of the same stuff that our sukha, or true happiness, or true humanness, is made. Through the great compassion of Amida Buddha, this is available to us right here, right now.